Hey everyone, my name is Josh Briddick and I want to welcome you to another Kinda Funny weekly review. On this show, we break down Kinda Funny content that comes out Monday through Friday, make it a little more digestible, that way you busy best friends out there can stay in the loop on what Kinda Funny is doing. So before we get started, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. Right now, if you go to kindafunny.com/store, you can check out the brand new Party Mode arcade shirt and the new Kinda Funny Games Daily shirt. Alongside that, the month of January is actually a fundraising month for Kinda Funny. Basically, if you go to patreon.com/kindafunny or patreon.com/kindafunnygames and donate $1 or increase your current pledge, that money goes into making more great shows for us, the Kinda Funny World Tour, and hopefully in the future a brand new studio, which I know the Kinda Funny team desperately need. Now there are also 4 new tiers for patreon.com if you are unfamiliar. Right now there's bronze, silver, gold, and the coveted platinum tier. Now alongside that you get special rewards and privileges for each show, and if you can't donate that much money, don't worry, there is still the $1 tier that's now labeled the Patreon exclusive tier. So this gives you access to Patreon exclusive shows like Greg's Comic Book Club, or on Kinda Funny Games, the video game club. Alright, so that's all for housekeeping, let's get started with the show. For this show, we have Greg return to the helm, joined by Forbes 30 Under 30, aka the second best baby blues in San Francisco, aka the verified one, at Tim Geddes. As always, we start out with the Roper Report. The Roper Report comes out swinging this week, with a story from Jason Schreier of Kotaku about the lawsuit against Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford. As always, Jason has an extensive and extremely well-written article about the whole situation. I'm putting the link to the story in the description, and I highly recommend looking into it. Moving along in the Roper Report, PlayStation Crossplay Beta gets a new edition with Rocket League. Now this news comes from RocketLeague.com from Jeremy Dunham himself. I think we all knew that it was only a matter of time, and this was a natural choice for the next crossplay game, and personally, I think it is a great addition. The more instances we see of crossplay, I think it's better for us as the players. On Twitter, Cappuccino Heck, a well-known data miner, tweets out a large list of SNES games that could be coming to the Nintendo Switch Online. Sony releases the top PSN downloads of 2018. Here's the list for PS4. 1. Call of Duty Black Ops 4. 2. Red Dead Redemption 2. 3. Marvel's Spider-Man. 4. God of War. 5. GTA 5. 6. NBA 2K19. 7. FIFA 2K19. 8. Monster Hunter World. 9. Far Cry 5. And 10. Madden NFL 19. For PSVR, we have number 1, Job Simulator. 2. Beat Saber. 3. Super Hot. 4. PSVR Worlds. 5. Rick and Morty, Virtual Reality. 6. Arizona Sunshine. 7. Moss. 8. Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. 9. Drive Club VR. And 10. Surgeon Simulator. Next, Epic's director of publishing strategy announces that the Epic Game Store has changed their refund policy. Lastly, Chris Welch of The Verge writes that Verizon is actually getting into cloud gaming. With the Roper Report all wrapped up, it's time to move on to reader mail. One question I want to highlight for Monday comes from Josh. Well, it's a pretty great name if you ask me. Essentially, Josh wants to know if Sony could pick up Bungie and add them to their house of Sony exclusive developers. Very interesting thought. Moving on to Squad Up, we have Alexander Pearson, who is looking for people to play Pokemon Go with. His trainer code is 363-594-046-970. Again, that's 363-594-046-970. So hit him up and start sending those gifts. Next, we're headed over to Gamecast. Hosts this week are Tim, Jared, Fran, and for the first time in a while, Andrea Renee. The show starts off, as always, with what everyone's been playing. Andrea rolled credits on Red Dead Redemption 2, and of course, with Andrea and Fran comes the Destiny grind. Aside from grinding out in Destiny, Fran says he's been also slogging through Red Dead Redemption 2, trying to beat it as well as playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Tim got his hands on the new Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, and we actually don't get to hear about what Jared's been playing. The topic of this show is the top 5 controversial gaming opinions. There's some pretty heated topics and conversations in here, but some well thought out explanations from East Host Opinion. I highly recommend checking out this topic, at least if you don't have time to watch the whole show. It can give some context to some opinions that you might have disagreed with in the past. Now the goal here was to hear 5 controversial opinions from everyone, but some of them went pretty long, so we didn't get to hear everyone, but here's what we did get. Fran's list starts off with the 7.9. Of course, if you don't know, Fran, when reviewing Mario Kart Double Dash, gave it a 7.9, and he's gotten a lot of flack for it ever since. After this, Fran kind of misunderstood the topic about the show, and he brought up Mortal Kombat and how it was just controversial in general, and then due to Fran's misunderstanding, we don't hear any more controversial opinions from him. Andrea's list starts out pretty heavy with that microtransactions are okay, and that cross-platform will be underwhelming. Again, with the long talk of everyone else's controversial opinions, this is the end of Andrea's list. list. Jared's list goes along as followed. Halo made shooters worse. Fortnite is the game of the decade. Video games don't cost enough and not for the reasons you think. Indie titles should cost more for all the work that developers are putting in. And Tim's list is that Final Fantasy VII is actually good. Final Fantasy 13, not bad. And the Final Fantasy X laugh is not bad, which one that really hits me near and dear to heart. I'm going to make a separate video about that because I agree with Tim. Moving on. The Wii U had better first party lineup than the Xbox One does today. The DualShock 4 is the best controller ever. And then Tim quickly throws in here at the end, Twilight Princess is better than Wind Waker. Crash Team Racing is the best kart racer, maybe not compared to Mario Kart 8, and that Warriors Within is as good as Sands of Time. So that finishes up the Gamecast. Now we're going to head over to Internet Explorers. Tim and Nick start the show by discussing the Spider-Verse soundtrack, and Nick is wondering if it's better than the Creed 2 soundtrack. Kevin gives Nick a happy belated birthday. If you missed out on wishing Uncle Nicky a happy birthday, go hit him up on Instagram or Twitter at Nick_Scarpino. The boys continue to work on giving a nickname to Barrett, and at IGN he was called Bam Bam, so that's what we're sticking with so far. For the first segment of the show, as always, is In Other News. The first story that Tim brings up is a Twitter video from @KirkDeverick demanding that we get the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Now if you haven't seen the video, it's great. Kirk and his friend obviously love Spider-Man, and later in the week the trailer actually dropped. So we could all kind of account that to Kirk, maybe? So go give him some shout out and go check out the Spider-Man trailer. It's fantastic. It's gonna come up again later. So I'll leave that at that. Jeff Weiss of TubeFilter.com gives a write-up about YouTube clarifying its policy on how profanity affects monetization. But that's not all from Jeff Weiss. The next story comes from him about Joseph Mango Marquez and how he passed out drunk on a Twitch stream and Twitch suspended him. The next news story comes from MSN.com where Jackson Ryan tells us the most liked picture on Instagram is now that of an egg. The final news story is about a video that is going around showing someone playing Mario Kart 8 in a baseball arena when no one else is around. Tim now introduces a new segment called Tim Wants to Show Nick Stuff, where you guessed it, Tim shows Nick stuff from the internet he thinks Nick would like. The first video is an insane gymnastic floor routine performed by Caitlin Ohashi on Twitter, so send her some sweet nasty love for her amazing skills. Then Tim shows Nick another one of her routines, but it's dubbed by the Ozzyman Reviews. Ozzyman Reviews are really funny, he's also got his own little flair, it adds a whole other level of comedy. And the final thing that Tim wants to show Nick is a tweet from @Kibblesmith stating it is possible that Batman's family was seeing Space Jam the night they were killed. Yet another news segment coming from Tim is that Tim wants to show you stuff. Tim shows us a video called Ocarina of Time, a masterclass in subtext, from the YouTube channel Good Blood. It's a video essay that explains the subtext of Ocarina of Time, and Tim claims it to be one of the best videos he's seen on the internet. So head over there to check it out. The next segment is Facebook algorithm t-shirt. Barrett tends to buy a lot of his clothes based off the Facebook algorithms that he sees. And this week, Barrett shows off the jacket that he bought. Next is the return of clickbait. Returning to ZurgeNet, the boys look at an article titled, "The actor who played Red Skull is gorgeous in real life." It takes 4 pages before we actually see the actor who played Red Skull, and the whole article itself is 12 pages long. Now it's time for fun clips where Patreon supporters at the bronze tier or above can submit their clips to the show. This week, the explorers will watch the fun clips and judge them, but the only opinion that really matters is the great firewall of Kevin. Now it's time for the word of the day, spoonerism, a verbal error in which the speaker accidentally transposes the initial sound or letters of 2 or more words, often to humorous effect. As in the sentence, you have hissed the mystery lecture. Instead of the intended sentence, you have missed the history lectures. With that, they move on to chat room and sub-only chat room to finish out the show. We're going to move along to Tuesday. Starting out as always, we've got more Kinda Funny Games Daily, joined again by Greg, and alongside him, the busiest lady in the business, Andrew Renee. Starting out, we have a little bit of a shorter Roper report. Continuing the trend of lawsuits this week, a mom of Fortnite superfan Orange Shirt Kid sues Epic Games for the use of his dance in the game. This story comes to us from Brian Gashente at Variety.com. Tom Mayer of Big Twinfinite reports that Fortnite 7.2 update brings back glider redeployment mechanic. Tom Mayer of Big Twinfinite reports that Fortnite 7.2 update brings back the glider redeployment mechanic. And rounding out the Roper report, Kinda Funny best friend Adam Banghurst of IGN writes that Red Dead Redemption 2 publisher is suing over Pinkerton use. So it seems like if you like law and you like video games, it's a pretty good job market right now for you. We're going to move on to Reader Mail, where David Scott writes in again, asking if our hosts think matchmaking in Anthem is a good idea or not. For Squad Up, we have Cassidy Harbor looking to play some Final Fantasy XIV with some fellow best friends. You can find them on PlayStation and PC, the profile name Averice_of_man. That's AVERICE_of_man. Now it's time to get fast and furious with Kinda Funny in Review. This is the first episode of the new season of the In Review series, and if you don't know, the team will be going over all the Fast and Furious movies. With this new season, we get some new podcasts within a podcast. First up is Facts of the Furious. Basically, where Tim would interject certain facts or trivia he would find out about the movies, they now fall under Facts of the Furious, dropping such facts like the filmmakers pitched the movie as West Side Story with cars, and used movies like Point Break and Donnie Brasco in the script as well. After introducing some facts under Facts of the Furious, the show begins. As always, Greg takes the helm in retelling the story of the first in the Fast franchise. Once we get to one scene where we see Vin Diesel shirtless, we are reintroduced to this season of Rank Those Abs. With the first abs in the season, Vin is ranked as number 1. Once the recap is completed, we are then introduced into a new segment called Haiku Review. In this segment, members at the bronze tier or above can write their review of the movie in a haiku form. That's 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, and finish with 5. For this episode, Gia Harris wrote 4 examples. My personal favorite is this. This movie wins by an inch, or maybe a mile. Winning's winning, right? Now we've got more ragu bagu, where rad guys rank bad guys, and with this movie being the first, there's only one slot, and number 1 goes to Johnny Tran. When this finishes out the review, we have the rankings of the Fast and Furious movies. Coming in at number 1, you guessed it, The Fast and the Furious. Next week, we'll be talking Too Fast, Too Furious, and we'll see if it can take the coveted number 1 spot. My guess is no. Now that's all for Tuesday. We're going to take it over to Wednesday. Wednesday starts off with another episode of Kinda Funny Games Daily. It's Witta Wednesday, so along with the Rogue One Gary Whitta, we have Greg Miller. To start the show is, and forever will be, the Roper Report. Roper Report starts with a story from Jason Schreier over at Kotaku about how EA cancels their open-world Star Wars game. Continuing the cancellation news, Ubisoft's Easter egg game is cancelled, writes Sabin Arif of IGN. And rounding out the Roper Report, IO Interactive opens up a new studio, reports James Batchelor from GamesIndustry.biz. Next we have Squad Up. Derek is looking for some people to play Firewall Zero Hour. His PSN name is The Caker's Man. We have no reader mail for this episode, so instead we have a rotating segment called This Trophy Can Go Fuck Itself. Phobos the Fucking Fantastic writes that he is struggling with the trophy Hermes Homie, which is to unlock the whole map in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. With Kinda Funny Games Daily all wrapped up, we're moving right along to KFAF. We are back with Nick and Andy to see the crazy mess they are going to take us on a ride for. After seeing how fans were grossed out by his story last week of being cut in the shower, Andy recites another tale of injury and pain involving his ankle, and then some kidney stones. After the tale is told, we move on to the second turn in the hottest game out there, Connect between 3 and 5. Once each player has made their skillfully thought out move, Nick reads some reviews from last week's show. The fans are saying it's the greatest show on the internet. Nick then describes a video that a fan made as a promo about how this is the greatest show, though the voiceover sounded pretty familiar. Now, with these wonderful reviews out of the way, we look at the results from the first Photoshop challenge. There were 10 really well done Photoshops of Kevin, all of which made me laugh. Though all 10 were great, the winner comes down to Connor Hackett with his piece Infinite Kevins. Congrats to Connor. You can tell that a whole lot of time and effort went into his submission. Next, the crew shows a video that discusses the new Photoshop submission rules. Now to submit your Photoshop, you're actually going to Twitter and use the hashtag KFAF. Hopefully this will cut down on confusion. There'll be a one-stop place to go. Post up whatever you've worked on. Again, hashtag KFAF, and you'll be entered in for next week's submission. Now, you probably want to know what next week's Photoshop challenge is. You need to put Andy into a fantasy movie series of your choice. This could be Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, anything. So go put Andy out there. Next, we actually have a pre-recorded bit where Nick and Andy try to use all of the gift cards in Andy's wallet in 1 hour. The gift cards that Andy has are Olive Garden, IHOP, Chili's, Starbucks, and a $6 CVS gift receipt. Now, it takes them 30 minutes just to get to their first stop, so I'll let you be the judge of how you think this whole time limit went. Now, the questions being asked may be very well thought out. The answers, on the other hand, are... well, it's Nick and Andy, so you never really get a solid answer. Now that Wednesday's all finished up, we're gonna head over to Thursday. Thursday starts us off with another Kinda Funny Games Daily. Now with Greg being out to host the red carpet premiere of Star Trek Discovery, we're joined by Jared and Tim. We're going to start the show off with the Roper Report. Got some pretty interesting stories, so let's dive in. First, Stephen Totello of Kotaku tells us that Ubisoft responds to criticisms at Assassin's Creed Odyssey's newest DLC. An upcoming update to Sea of Thieves will require players to download and reinstall the game, says Matt Kim of US Gamer. Some big Death Stranding news comes out that Kojima has shown off 2 hours of the game privately to Guerrilla Games, says Joseph Screbbles, a made-up name of IGN. Now I want to inject here just a little bit. I know it says that the first 2 hours of the game were shown, but with this being a Kojima game, it doesn't necessarily mean all 2 hours were gameplay. Anyone who's played a Metal Gear game can attest to that. The last and biggest story of this Rover Report is that Betty White turned 97. So if you haven't already, go throw Betty White some sweet nasty belated birthday love. On top of the daily sweet nasty love you should be sending Miss White anyways. Moving on to reader mail for today, we had some pretty strong questions, but I want to highlight one that comes from the nanobiologist. For those of you who don't know, Kingdom Hearts 3 is releasing a secret ending for the game with a Day 2 patch and the epilogue during the Day 3 patch. The nanobiologist wants to know, with this trend, will the next step with Day 1/launch day patches be a patch that's actually just the ending to the game? I think this is a pretty interesting question because we're seeing a lot more Day 1 patches come out as games are being more rushed. Personally, I would rather just wait longer for the game to come out as one complete package, but I understand that times are changing. For Squad Up, we have Matthew, who is looking for some kind of funny best friends to play Destiny 2. His PSN is afro_mop. Matthew also had an idea for a new segment, which is Jared Petty's hot take of the day. Today's hot take is that we and DS are the saviors of pure gaming in that generation. With another kind of funny games daily in the can, it's time to check out Debatable. The topic for Debatable on this episode was the top 10 Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes. Jared is back at the helm, leading the crew, while Greg returns in the debater's seat, joined by his opponent, Jack Patillo of Rooster Teeth. Each contestant brought 5 heroes to the table and has to hash out why they think their choice is the best. Jack comes to the table with Star-Lord, Hulk, Black Widow, Iron Man, and Thor. Greg comes loaded with a few strange names on his list: Phil Coulson, Quicksilver, Captain America, Spider-Man, and Thanos? Now Jared brings up the Wheel of Fate/Infinity, while each debater spins the wheel, and a Patreon supporter on the bronze tier above can actually put in their picks. Now the wheel has a Patreon supporter's name on it. Jared then selects one hero from the Patreon supporter's name that was landed on, and that debater has to fight for their pick. Greg must fight for why Loki should be on the list, and this pick comes from Luke Pattinson. Jack fights for Black Panther, chosen by Drew Milliken. In the final round, Greg tries to convince Jared that Thor should be higher up on the list, which would steal him from Jack and solidify Greg having more picks in the top 5. Jack whips out a fresh name for the final round when he fights for Vision. While it is a hard-fought debate, Jared picks out his final choice. The new definitive list of Marvel Cinematic Universe top heroes is number 1, Iron Man, number 2, Coulson, number 3, Thor, number 4, Spider-Man, number 5, Loki, number 6, Black Widow, number 7, Captain America, number 8, Star-Lord, number 9, the Hulk, and number 10, Vision. With the list settled, it's time to move on over to Party Mode. For Party Mode this week, we have the first ever episode of Party Mode Pregame. Party Mode Pregame is where the team gets together and plays a game that has either just come out or is still in early access or pre-release. For this week, Andy is joined by Tim and Nick as they play through the 30-minute one-shot demo of Resident Evil 2 Remake. Having to play a scary game, timed, while with Nick and Tim talking in his ear, may be the hardest modifier Andy could ask for to play a game. I think we're in for quite a treat. That ends the content for Thursday. It's time to move to the final day of the week. To start the final day of content this week, we have Kinda Funny Games Daily. This episode is hosted by Andrea Renee and Mr. Tim Geddes. Starting off the show as always is the Rover Report. This report is a little shorter. It starts off with some Mortal Kombat 11. Andrea was at the reveal event, but they also discuss a write-up from Adam Bankhurst of IGN. Next we move on to a story from Anna Kent of Eurogamer, stating that Netflix sees Fortnite as its greatest threat. And rounding out the Rover Report is Rebecca Valentine over at GamesIndustry.biz, stating that US and Canada's mobile gaming market brought in $9.37 billion in 2018. Time to move on to Reader Mail. I had some pretty solid questions coming out of Reader Mail this week, but I'm going to highlight one of the lighter ones. Ignacio Rojas asks, what would you like to see in the Power Rangers game? Now finishing the show, we have Squad Up, where Inigo wants to see if any Kinda Funny best friends playing Star Wars The Old Republic wanted a chill guild to play with. The guild is Smokin' Wookiees, and their website is smokinwookiees.engine.com. So check them out if you're interested. That's all for Kinda Funny Games Daily. Let's go check in on Kevin with Screencast. The show starts off with some shenanigans of talking about their scaling system for movies. Of course, we all know Nick has his 3-point scaling system, where Tim and Kevin stick with a 5-point scale. Moving right along to news. First story is about the largest price increase the company Netflix has ever seen. In some happier news, we have the Uncharted film finding a new director. The new director is Helmer Dan Treckenberg from 10 Cloverfield Lane. This then leads to whether or not this movie actually needs to be made, or if video games need to be made into movies in general. More announcements come in the form of 2 new Mission Impossible movies that will be coming out back to back. The last news story comes in the announcement of a live-action Hunchback of Notre Dame movie. Next, Kevin announces a new segment called Trailer Talk. On this episode, the gents talk about 5 different trailers. First up, they talk about Genlock from Rooster Teeth, then John Wick Chapter 3, followed by the little Ghostbusters sneak peek trailer that came out, then the Game of Thrones teaser, and then lastly, the Spider-Man trailer. Sidebar, as I said before in the episode, this trailer was so good. It got me so hyped for this movie. I'm a super big Spider-Man fan, so I can't wait to see it. If you haven't seen this trailer, definitely go check it out. Now, after all the Spider-Man talk dies down, they move out to Out Now. Coming to Netflix, we have Fire, The Party That Never Happened, American Gangster, The Punisher Season 2, and I.O. Movies out in theaters, Glass. That's all Kevin had to highlight. Moving right along, Kevin reads submissions of Patreon supporters from the bronze tier or above about their favorite movie of 2018. By supporting at the bronze tier at patreon.com/kindafunny, you could have your submission read aloud, like Nick DeMarco, who talked about his favorite movie, Roma. The next submission will be for people to tell Kevin what movie he should watch over the weekend. With the submissions read, the guys move on to reviewing the movie Glass. Now they start out spoiler free, but they do dig into spoiler territory. Thankfully, they save this for the end of the show, so if you want to stay away from spoilers, you could just end right after submissions are read. But if you do want to know what's going on before spoilers, there are time codes in the description so you know where to be wary of. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Kevin. Hosting a show is not easy, but Kevin has put in a lot of time and energy to make sure it's as best as it can be for his best friend. On top of everything else Kevin has to do, I think it's really amazing that he is stepping up to host his own show. I think that we can already see Kevin making improvements, and I know, much like the rest of the best friends, we are very proud of him. For the final show of the week, we have the Kinda Funny podcast. So this week, for how long does it take to start the podcast, we have a lightning fast start at 5 seconds. Coming out as professionals immediately starting the podcast, which blows minds. They start right off with introducing who's who. With that said, the actual spiel about this show, this table, 4 topics, doesn't really start until 5 minutes into the show, but we're going to cut him some slack. Greg's Wingstop shirt is discussed, which leads into a talk of Rick Ross, who owns his own wing shop. Rick Ross leads Andy into mentioning that Ross was in Fire Festival and how Andy watched Hulu's Firefest doc. A seamless transition by Mr. Cortez. Joey then comes in on the shock mic to talk with Andy about what they both thought about this documentary. The talk of Firefest leads to Nick talking about Burning Man, and now the guys discuss how they would never go to any kind of festival like Burning Man, and they believe they would probably die if they did. Greg brings up the first official topic, which seems like the format's still going to be going topic by topic, or throwing out just what someone wants to talk about for the podcast. Tim brings up that he went to Mexico. Tim and Gia went into an all-inclusive resort in Cabo, where they got a penthouse with a bunch of other people to celebrate one of Tim's friends' birthday. Nick brings up that the last time he was in Cabo he was actually with G-Unit, shooting a thing for 50 Cent Blood in the Sands with IGN. Tim actually mentions that his favorite part about being in Cabo was sitting in the hot tub with his Nintendo Switch, playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Tim and his group met a woman who was actually recently divorced, but also from San Francisco, and Tim tells how he had a single friend who kept running into this woman, and how in Tim's mind, this was the perfect setup for a rom-com. Tim then mentions he did some snorkeling while in Mexico, and also that he got to see some whales. This leads to the talk of blowholes, and Nick coming to fear and not caring about the ocean. In true Kinda Funny fashion, the train of conversation leads the gents to the Drew Carey show, and how both Tim and Joey thought the character Mimi was played by Drew Carey for a very long time. After this, the ads are read, and then they come back to talk about Facebook, how it's changed, how they're old and don't use it, and what they don't like about Facebook. After the Facebook talk, Greg goes to talk about how he went to the Deadly Class premiere. He goes through the whole story from getting invited to what the event was actually like. Greg also brought a gift bag back from the event, and they open it talking about the knickknacks on the show. After Greg talks about Deadly Class, he brings up the Star Trek Discovery hosting event that he's going to be doing. Greg and Nick then begin to sell Star Trek Discovery to the rest of the group. The last topic comes from Unabashedly Reggie, where he asks the group to talk about their worst date blunders. Greg directs this question towards Andy, but Andy doesn't really have any. So with that question answered, the gents just kind of talk about random things from Netflix shows they watch, funny actors, funny TV shows, and kind of just round out the show there. And that wraps up the Kinda Funny podcast, and along with it, this week's worth of Kinda Funny content. Well, that's been the show. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope it helped you out a little bit. If you want to, you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Biddick, and if you wouldn't mind, like, commenting, and subscribing, not only to this video, but wherever you consume your Kinda Funny content. And don't forget, again, the month of January is a fundraising month for Kinda Funny. So if you can, head over to patreon.com/kindafunny or patreon.com/kindafunnygames and donate whatever you can. If you can't, No big deal. Still have content coming out for you every single day. Other than that, that's all I've got for you. So have fun, be safe, and we'll see you next time.